Welcome back. You're watching Newslink, and Steenhuisen and Mpho Phalatse are battling out in Midrand this weekend. But there's more to the DA Federal Congress than just who takes the reins. The party will also be outlining key policy decisions ahead of next year's elections. So let's find out what's expected from political addresses from the different leadership of the DA with political analyst Duvenhage. A very good morning to you, Mr. Duvenhage, and thank you very much for joining us. I just want to quickly reflect on an interview I just had with a former DA leader, Tony Leon, who indicated that he supports Steenhuisen continuing on as a leader of the DA. But if Mpho Phalatse did take over, she would have a tough task of making sure that internal issues are fixed and fixed quickly so they could focus on what exactly they have to offer South Africa ahead of 2024's elections. What are your views on that quite broadly before we get into specifics of policy issues within the DA?
Good morning. Yes, I think we must see the relationship between Mr. Leon and Mr. Steenhuisen as a very close relationship, and I can fully understand that Mr. Leon is supporting Mr. Steenhuisen. We have seen that in the period after the Mmusi Maimane phase and how they rebuilt the party since Mmusi Maimane was the leader. Now, your question about Tony Leon and his role, I think he is behind the scenes playing a very important role. It was mentioned in some of the interviews that the DA is one of the most diverse parties in South Africa. And it's absolutely true. In a time where identity politics is becoming more and more important, the DA still has a very strong representativity from different race and different identity groups. And that is making it extremely difficult to manage such a party. Now, I think what I'm expecting is that Steenhuisen will continue. We know Helen Zille is in position. I think Meyer will also achieve the position of chairperson, and maybe we will see some smaller changes on the levels of deputies and some of the other role players. But if there's a major change, if a person like Mpho Phalatse is taking over, it's going to be a big task for her to consolidate her position. I'm not saying it is impossible, and I think she's playing an important role in the structures of the party, but I think at the moment it's a bit unlikely that she's going to make it.
It may be unlikely that she'd make it as the DA leader, Mr. Duvenhage, but how important would it be, or symbolic, if you will, for someone like Mpho Phalatse to ascend to that position of DA leader? As you say, it is the most diverse party, or one of the most diverse party in terms of representation. So the symbolism of a person like Mpho Phalatse taking over the reins from Steenhuisen, wouldn't that be important for the party ahead of the elections?
I think that may be very important, but we must say to each other that the core constituencies that are supporting the Democratic Alliance are the so-called minority groups. And at the moment, the black support base is relatively limited. And she will be in a position that she must reconcile her position with the support bases of other groupings. And that is not impossible, but as we know in South Africa, this is a difficult task. But I think despite the outcome of this election, Mpho Phalatse can still play a very important, even a critical role in the future of the DA as a political leader.
Now, it's not just the lovely performances that we've seen throughout the morning that are going to form an important part of this weekend for the DA. Those policy resolutions and discussions that they'll be having are quite crucial. And as we move towards those 2024 elections, Prof, I'm just wondering what policy resolutions should be the priority of the DA that best or suit rather the average South African who's waiting for basic service delivery. What should those policy resolutions be that are at the very top of the DA's policy resolution list?
Well, maybe first a general point. It is very interesting that policy issues and policy viewpoints are not always the central factor that is mobilizing support for a party. Sometimes the image of the leadership, the way they conduct their strategy can be just as influential, maybe even more influential. But you are absolutely right that policy issues are going to be important. Looking at the situation in the country at the moment, we are really a country that's in crisis. And I can describe that crisis by the fact that we have an unemployment rate of more than 40%. We have a growth rate of close to naught. We have load shedding. We have problems with service delivery in about 80% of all the municipalities. We are seeing a major reconfiguration of politics. So I think the voters want some direction. They want some leadership with regard to crucial political, economic, and social issues. Political issues has to do with political decay, the implementation of the Constitution. Economic questions has to do with things like growth rate, unemployment. But I think a question that will be at the core will be the B policy. I am expecting the DA to distance themselves from the broad-based black economic empowerment strategies on a number of bases. First, they believe in individualism coming from liberalism, not in the collective approach. So that is at the core of the ideology. Then there's a feeling within the DA that broad-based black economic empowerment has a discriminatory basis because it is emphasizing a certain race category. I also know there are serious concerns about the independence of the legal processes. There are concerns about corruption and state capture and strong action taken by institutions like the National Prosecution Authority, their independence in this regard, and so on.
Finally, Prof, I want to speak about Helen Zille, her standing unopposed as the federal chair for the party. Does that not concern you at all as a political analyst that it's almost like a never-ending tenure that she has taken on within the party? Or is it a situation of if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Well, I was fortunate to meet Helen Zille a few days back, and I had conversations with her where we discussed together the general political situation in the country, debate a bit. And I must tell you, she is a formidable politician. And I think after the 2019 election and the drop in support for the DA, Helen Zille, Tony Leon, and Ryan Coetzee played a critical role to get the party back on track. And I think Helen Zille was probably the kingpin in this regard. So I think, in a way, she's a bit of a guardian for the party. But I do not see her in conflict or even in competition with a person like John Steenhuisen. In a way, she is supporting the party. She would like to go forward and see the party ending up strongly. I think if the party performed better during the 2019 election, most probably she would have left politics already. And she told me in person that this will be her last term in politics as chairperson of the Federal Council of the Democratic Alliance.